Hey everybody, it's Alan from the Rackspace Cloud Launch Team. Welcome to this week's edition of the Office Hours Hangout. I'm with, as always, Drew Cox from our Cloud Launch Team as well. Hey Drew, and we also have another racker with us today, Steve Caton. He's a remote racker. He's joining us from his spread in Sacramento, California. We got another guest as usual here, Jeff Olson, one of our Rackspace partners. He's in New Jersey, just across the river. He says he's got a beautiful view, but it's a little too windy to open up the window and share that with us. So, so we've got coast to coast coverage today, and we hope that other people out there can join us. You can click on the ticket link within the invitation, or we can go ahead and post that directly underneath as a comment as well if you want to join us live on the Hangout here. So today we've got a couple of things to talk about. We wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about monitoring, kind of some of the things you should do during the product lifecycle for monitoring your application, your project, whatever you're working on. But first, I think we wanted to jump in and talk about a couple of different things, going on in the cloud and going on around here at Rackspace. So, the first thing I'm going to mention is this last weekend, some of us were able to go to an interesting event. Drew, you want to talk about the hackathon that we attended?
Yeah, so last week was the National Hack for Change weekend, and was actually I think the day for ethical hacking or something along that line, but
civic
ended up
hacking.
being a multiple day event. We got to go to the Austin hackathon, and we got to work with a variety of people. So people brought their needs, if they're civic leaders who have a specific issue they want to address, or nonprofits who have needs that need to be met and not the expertise to meet those needs. So they came with their issues, and then a bunch of developers and people who are in the tech field came and volunteered their expertise and their time to see what they could do to solve some of these problems that are out there. And so we were able to go and join in that conversation over the weekend, help provide some infrastructure expertise and that kind of thing, but just be a part of trying to solve some of the problems that it's easy to have red tape that gets in the way, or just a lack of the knowledge and expertise to get that issue resolved. We were able to be a part of solving some of those. So all kinds of great ideas. People all over the country were working on their own cities' problems, but we got to see a few different prototypes and proofs of concept come through, and some progress towards really making changes for Austin, and getting really great tools in place and momentum going on solving some of the issues that are just out there. Things from feeding the hungry to connecting people with their lost pets, all kinds of things. So.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. Drew and myself were there from our team, along with Jason Swindle, another racker on our team. Our team lead, the manager of our team, Joseph Palumbo, donated a good portion of his weekend to be out there as well. And also a big shout out to a couple of our Austin rackers, Jay Morgan and Eric McGregor and Nels Nelson. And I always do this, and I always name names specifically and leave people out. So if I miss you, I definitely thank you for your time that weekend, and my apologies for missing out on naming you specifically. But it was a great fun weekend, and I think we got a lot done. It was really interesting to be able to go out there and make a difference and donate our time. So if anybody out there has an opportunity to check out a hackathon, especially these Hack for Change hackathons that are very centered on making a difference in your community, definitely go out there and take advantage of that. Yeah. Also want to talk, do a little cloud news segment again. Last week we talked about some of the things that were going on in the cloud generally, and had some interesting stories we were able to talk about. One of which was Netflix bringing back Arrested Development. We were kind of hush-hush on that one since Drew hadn't had a chance to watch it yet, but he says he's completely caught up now, so you can go ahead and spoil that for Drew all you want. It's not gonna hurt his feelings. I think the other things that we wanted to talk about as far as cloud news, Drew, I know you had something that you had mentioned you wanted to talk about with our new service level.
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen over the years of being a hosting company is that uptime has always been this really key component for customers, and that's gone as the cloud has evolved from being server-specific uptime to more application uptime. So one of the things that we're working to put together is SLAs around application uptime and building in a way that makes sense for leveraging the cloud and building in a way that is in line with our recommendations. We feel like doing that's going to put you in a place where you can succeed. You're going to have more resiliency and stability. And so by following our advice, by following our direction, we're going to up the ante for our SLA, and that's going to be something that's coming out real shortly, specifically around our managed cloud offering. And there's some information on a blog post that just went live on the Rackspace blog here recently. But the things that we've been talking about on the Hangout are bits and pieces of this best practice and this recommended architecture. And by taking advantage of these things, you're going to have a more stable and secure and resilient solution. And so we want to put real weight behind those things. And so it's really important from Rackspace's point of view that that's something that our customers are all aware of, and that we kind of put our seal of approval and our weight behind by upping the SLA in that way. So as we do more of these Hangouts, we're going to be talking more and more about the different things that you can do to have that resiliency. But it's definitely something that we're excited about and want to continue to educate everybody. It doesn't have to be a Rackspace customer. We want people to understand the cloud and how to use it and how to get the most out of it.
Right.
So
right.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, Steve, I'm kind of interested in your take on that. I mean, you're a managed cloud racker, you're a frontline racker, so you are going to be working on that. And so I'm kind of interested to see what you think this is going to bring for Rackspace and just for the cloud in general.
Sorry, I had to unmute there. But from the support side of things, we're excited about it because it gives us the ability to really put in place an infrastructure that we feel we can support. So much of the time we get a scenario where the customer comes to us with something that's already broken and they just want to run with the ball and expect us to support it. The Bold Guarantee will really give us the opportunity to do what we know we can do. So it's definitely an exciting time, and cloud monitoring, as we're going to talk about shortly, will play a large role in that.
Great. Oh, hey, had to unmute myself too. It's going around. Yeah, no, thanks. I know we're all really excited about this, and happy to see this coming in. One of the other items that I wanted to talk about was we just in another blog entry that we just released yesterday, we're working with a plugin for WordPress called Updraft Plus, and it's a really cool plugin. It'll let you do a direct upload or do direct backups from your WordPress installation directly to cloud files. We talked about backup last week, and kind of the great news about being able to back up your WordPress installation to directly to cloud files is that it's really not a best practice to dump your backup onto the machine that's running your production code. So this is a great way to get it up into cloud files, a nice redundant service that's going to that's going to be there, and it'll keep it off of that server. So if something happens to your server, hey, no big deal. I've got it up in cloud files. So that's a great feature. So we'll go ahead and post a link to that blog entry as well. And then, Jeff, I know that you had mentioned on Google Plus earlier this week that you're going to be visiting Cloud Expo in Chicago next week.
New York. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. So very excited about that. It just happens to be 5-minute ferry ride for me, and it'll be my first time going, and looking forward to seeing all the different vendors and what's going on in the cloud, because I know that there's a lot of stuff brewing out there and a lot of topics to be discussed. And so I hope to gather as much info as I can and bring it back here and contribute and have conversations about it and see,
Great.
What works, what's the trends out there, and so on and so forth.
Great. Sounds good. We're looking forward to seeing you wrap up. Don has joined us as well. Don mentioned in a chat here that he has no camera or phone to call in, but he is listening, and he did have a really great haircut lately. So that's good to see. Glad to hear that, Don. He also asked if we're attending this. So Rackspace is going to be there. Quite a few of us are going to be at the Cloud Expo. I'm personally not. Drew, I don't believe that you are either. Steve? No? No. Okay. So it looks like, but there's a whole bunch of us that are going to be attending. So if you are if you're out there listening and you're going to be in attendance at the Cloud Expo in New York next week, go ahead and track down Jeff, say hi, and then there's also a whole bunch of rackers that are going to be there. We'll have a booth, probably some pretty cool swag, and yeah. So stop by and say hi, and let us know.
I think it's booth 300, so I'm just gonna.
That sounds right.
Throw that out there as my my little plug. Go track us down there.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Drew. Yeah, so booth 300, check us out. If you're just joining us now, watching live, hey, how's it going? I'm Alan from the Rackspace Cloud Launch team. We've got a couple other rackers here and a couple customers with us today. We're talking monitoring in the cloud. That's our main topic for today. We're just going to kind of throw out a couple of ideas around monitoring and how you can do that. But if you want to join in the conversation, we want to hear from you. So you can connect with us. If you're watching this live, there's probably a little link below that says click here to join live. If you click on that, you can jump in and we can chat like this face to face. If you are really enjoying your own haircut but don't have a camera to share it with us, no big deal. You can do what Don's doing and listening in and contributing great stuff as he has before in the chat section. If you want to just comment on the directly on the video that you're seeing, you can leave a comment right below it. You can even email us at launch@rackspace.com or even give us a shout out on Twitter. We'll try to monitor that too. But if you have a question or want to jump in on the conversation, please do in one way or the other. So Drew, you kind of outlined, you had a great idea on how we can kind of talk about monitoring today, kind of breaking it out. So you want to jump in and intro that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways you can parse monitoring, what's being monitored, how deep it goes into the stack, all kinds of different ways we could break it out. But the approach we're going to take in this conversation is going to be in a life cycle of a project. So what do you do when you're planning? How does monitoring affect planning? How does monitoring affect the build component? And then how does monitoring affect your deployment and maintenance of your solution? Those are the three main categories in which we're going to think about monitoring. And so as we're having that conversation, as we're working through what's out there and what can be used, feel free to jump in with examples of when you've gone ahead and deployed one of these ideas at that juncture, or if you maybe missed that idea or that point in time and paid for it later on. We'll commiserate with you a little bit, but also those lessons learned are great for the rest of the community because everybody's got a project, and so depending on where you are, you can learn from somebody who's been in that spot before. So let's start with talking about how to plan and how to get your monitoring components as part of that planning stage. Anytime you're planning something, it's all about requirements gathering and then solution identification. So when you're thinking about monitoring as a planning component, you need to know what do we need to keep tabs on and eyes on. And that could be anything from what is this project costing us from the hosting perspective, or going to cost us? What traffic metrics do we need to be able to gather? What load times are sufficient? That kind of thing. And it's going to be different for different projects. Uptime is obviously the most important thing across the board. So a lot of times that's got a lot of variables, and you have to figure out what things do we need to monitor to ensure we have solution uptime, application uptime. So gather those requirements, decide what exactly needs to be tracked, and then you're going to be able to actually get that need met. There are all kinds of products. Rackspace offers some of them. There are third-party products. You may have to build some of these tools if you have specific use cases that don't have a solution out there. Maybe something that you put out open source because there's going to be other people who want to build on that and add functionality for you. So thinking through what you're going to need and how you're going to track that is crucial before you even really hit the ground in your build stage. We talk to a lot of startups and people who are just getting going, and a lot of times they've got the metrics they're focused on, and they didn't think about those other metrics that are important, and so countless times that they get into production and never even thought about tracking that one thing. Maybe it's the tech team is monitoring all kinds of things, and the business guy never got the financial metrics they needed, and so costs go through the roof. They have to scale everything back, and they lose out on an opportunity. So we see that type of thing a lot, and it's incredibly helpful to already have that lined out and in a plan. And then once you move into that build phase, that's when you go and test to make sure the solutions we thought were going to work actually do work. And so that's a really big piece of it. So Jeff, have you run into any of these planning phase monitors where you had a component you needed to track down and you had to go search out the right solution for it?
All the time, and I've mostly encountered it when taking over an existing environment, maybe another service provider had, and maybe they didn't want to implement any sort of monitoring for pricing purposes or just lack of knowledge. There are some complicated tools out there, and a client's ready to maybe upgrade or install a new application, and they already had this kind of plan laid out, but didn't include the monitoring. And they roll it out and realize that, just like you said, costs go through the roof, and they didn't factor in licensing or all this kind of stuff, and now they had to kind of go back and scale back, which basically defeats the whole purpose of what they were trying to accomplish. So, there's a plethora of tools out there to kind of collaborate with various teams, based on the size of your business or enterprise, and it's just a matter of keeping everyone on the same page from start to finish, and making sure that monitoring is in place.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was battling my muted mic there again. This is becoming a theme.
Uh-oh.
So,
Drew's got the battle of the mic again there.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're on. You're on again now. Go on.
Fantastic. All right. Yeah, so that planning phase is really crucial because there's so much that needs to be monitored, and the more you've thought through what exactly your needs are, the better you're going to be set up to have success. That next phase is that build component. The place where monitoring really comes in the most handy during build is in conjunction with load testing. One of the things we talk about all the time is setting up fire drills, actually putting in action your plans so that you can see how they all work. Load testing is one of those key components. Before going live, you've built your solution, you've set up your monitoring, but you actually put it under load, put it under duress so that it can experience what you're planning to experience. So expected load times whatever, so that you have that bigger than peak test to throw at your solution. Doing a load test is going to give you some analytics, but having the right monitoring on the back end will show you the bottlenecks and exactly what was happening kind of behind the curtain. So you can see a lot of the places where you can make adjustments to a query or a setting or some component of your code or infrastructure, and you can make those changes and do another test and see how those changes affected your overall solution and experience for those users, and take those lessons learned into production instead of rolling the dice and just cutting over DNS and going with it. You've done your load testing, you've seen behind the curtain, you know what happens when you hit certain peaks and thresholds, and you've addressed those potential bottlenecks. This is all about verifying that the solution you put in place does what you intended it to do. But that goes beyond just the load test. It's also tripping these monitors on purpose to see how the alert occurs. If you need something to text you when there's a problem because you need to know right then wherever you are, make sure that when that monitor fires, you get that text. If it's just send an email to a list, well, do you have a plan for who's responsible to that list, who needs to jump in, all of that. So doing those verification fire drills that actually put you monitoring solution to the test is going to give you that peace of mind that not only does it stand up to the load that I'm expecting, plus some, but also when there's problems, the right set of things happen. So there are all sorts of tight spots you can get yourself into, but if you've set up a solution that responds well, responds the way you need it to, then you can be much more quickly reactive and not have the same impact to your business and to your solution. So
yeah,
those
exactly.
fire drills.
Yeah, I mean, going all the way back to 2005, 2006, you guys are probably familiar with a company called CompuWare, and I worked extensively with their Vantage suite of application monitoring, and that's exactly what we would implement with big companies is monitoring, or is basically load testing, looking for bottlenecks in applications during the testing phase before it's rolled out to production, because we would see on the flip side, they didn't do it, companies wouldn't do any of that. Then you go, wow, this does not work, and we have to go and deploy this and kind of, untangle the spaghetti from there. And so it's again, going back to the previous discussions that we had is having that playbook and then throwing that monitoring aspect in there as well from the development stage all the way through the production stage.
Right. Absolutely. It's always you plan again. I mean, if it's that measure twice, cut once kind of mentality. You really want to make sure that you have everything planned out, and then we've probably said the word fire drill on here more than I heard in elementary school, which I don't know if that speaks well for my school or for our planning phase, but we definitely want to see that happen. And here at Rackspace, we can actually help you with a lot of that stuff. I mean, that's feel free to call us. I'm going to sound a little bit perhaps like my grandmother here, but you never call us unless something's wrong. Why aren't you? You guys can call us. Let's have a proactive conversation. We'll obviously help you if your site goes down, but we're here to help you kind of figure some of that out. Maybe Steve, Drew, we can kind of walk through a couple of the examples of where we've actually been able to help people get those set up.
Yeah, happy to do so. The first thing I do want to agree with completely is the planning stage. Too frequently do we find that customers come to us with a working application that is no longer working, and they have nothing in place for their plan from their build. They have zero monitoring, so we have nothing to go on. And so it really comes down to, it worked yesterday and it doesn't work today, please fix it. So a lot of this planning stage really dictates what's important to your application, and doing that ensures that you know what's important so you can tell us when you come to us with support. That's one of the big concerns that we have when customers come to us with an application that just doesn't work out of the gate. So it's something to keep in mind. I'm also a big fan of the load testing that Drew mentioned. There's tons of services out there. There's tons of services that are free. There's some really good ones in blitz.io. Loader.io. Loadstorm is great. Use them. They're free. If you need higher traffic patterns, then you pay for them. But they have free services, and it would be eye-opening to see how many large, profitable websites can't handle 100 concurrent users. People don't think about it, but it's a big deal. I mean, I've worked with sites that make millions of dollars a year and can handle 10 to 15 concurrent users, and that's functional for their business. So it's okay, but knowing those metrics is important, and that's where the load testing really comes in. So if you're not doing it, you're doing a disservice to yourself and a disservice to your business. And then when you come to us for support, what's the first thing we're going to tell you? Hey, let's do some load testing. Hey, let's do some monitoring. So you can really hedge your bet by doing that stuff beforehand, so you have some metrics. So you actually have that information gathered and you can do something with it rather than just coming to Rackspace and going, hey, everything's broken, I need help fixing it. We will help you fix it, but having those metrics are going to be very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we also got another comment from William Sellers. He's watching online. He mentions that he agrees monitoring should be just as important as disaster recovery testing, in his humble opinion. So yeah, absolutely. More votes for planning and for monitoring. Absolutely there. One of the things I know that we can do, one of our partners is New Relic. I think we mentioned them a little bit here, and on the managed services end of things, we can kind of help you interpret some of the analysis from that and make some suggestions as far as tuning. If you're running a LAMP stack, tuning your Apache, do a little bit of MySQL tuning as well. So New Relic, RightScale, they both have a full suite of products that can really help you out with those. Help you monitor. Another component of that, RightScale actually just released a really cool looking tool. I haven't had the month that it's going to need to test it, I don't think, but it's a cost monitoring application. I know, Jeff, you posted that in Google Plus actually and kind of tipped me off to that. Did you look any more in depth into that?
I didn't. I saw it and realized it's free. I just haven't had time to set it up, but it looks like a really cool tool, and I can't wait to try it out. Because, obviously everyone, I think, at some point in their cloud deployment is battling the whole, utility-based pricing model. And to be able to do projection just like a business cash flow projection is very important. So we'll see what it can do.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of those things that may need to be monitored, that you may have to go out and find the right solution for. But monitoring needs don't necessarily stop at the infrastructure level or at the code level. There are all kinds of things that people need to track, and some people may need to know, who's coming from where to my site, so that they can provide those analytics to the people who are advertising on their site. Or there's any number of things that may be crucial. That cost component for any business, you have to know how much cost you're accruing, because there's no way you can stay in business if cash flow gets upside down. It's just impossible, and you have to have a solution for it. And you may be able to set up a solution that's really repeatable and that's really pretty standard and doesn't have the same incredible fluidity to your costs. But when it's utility based, something can go completely wild pretty quickly, and you need to know about it so that you can either take the steps you need to take to correct it, or be sure that it's going wild in a good way and you've monetized that spike. Because if it's bandwidth, great, maybe you're just getting a lot more views than you have in the past, and you better be monetizing that correctly. But those triggers can let you know about really important trends, and different businesses have different trends they're tracking. So in both of the planning and that build test phase, it's really important to think through all of those things. Don't get your focus too tight on one component. Application monitoring is great for developers who are looking at just tweaking and tuning what's the biggest bottleneck, let's hit that. What's the next biggest bottleneck, let's hit that. But beyond that, there are all kinds of things that can really add total business value that aren't just the baseline analytics of how much CPU usage do I have, or what's my longest query. So
great.
There's also that analog component that you kind of referenced last week, and which has nothing to do with software. It's kind of keeping track of where your data is stored. So, for instance, I monitor the status of data centers, and if there's anything going on with a certain data center, need to be able to be proactive and possibly move it to another one to prevent downtime. So You know, there's not just always that software component, but
Yeah.
let's say data center, in the Midwest gets hit by a tornado and they're running on diesel and they can't get gas. Okay, well that becomes a problem. So being proactive and maybe planning ahead and saying, okay, if this happens, what am I going to do? And that's kind of
Yeah.
like that analog monitoring aspect that people forget about and pay very high consequences for it.
That's a great point. I remember, Jeff, the first time you joined the Hangout, you mentioned that Rackspace really came through for you when Hurricane Sandy happened. You were able to offload a lot of your data centers that were in the New York, New Jersey area and push things up to the cloud in a timely manner. And so that's that analog. You got to check the weather, even. That's a great point that I think a lot of people would miss sometimes. Thanks for bringing that in.
Yeah, one of the cool things about being in the castle is you can walk around and see what different departments are doing, and you walk into the knock and they've got satellite up that show weather patterns for the areas that we have data centers in, and they're keeping track of that kind of stuff. It's as important to us as a lot of the other metrics around what's this provider giving us from a throughput standpoint. Where's traffic coming from? Is there a DOS here or a DOS there? Those kinds of weather components, or just a clearer understanding of exactly what you're doing. Who knows what other analog components, to use that same phrase, can affect your solution, and a good understanding of what you're doing and what your needs are can give you that leg up on the competition, or just that extra bit of stability that there's a hurricane coming. We need to pivot to another location that's not going to be as high risk.
Yep.
So,
Cool.
Did I mute myself there?
Yeah, you did.
I'm back in.
You're back. Yeah, I think we got the end of your sentence there.
Cool.
Don commented here that he used to work on a website that allowed them to monitor YouTube and link it to events. So, for example, a spike in views of a music group's videos the day after they won a Grammy Award. So another thing that monitoring can allow you to do is to watch trends. You can believe it. You can't necessarily prove it, but you can believe that those trends are tied to events. And then that will allow you to predict future trends and be proactive in those. So that's kind of a couple of weeks ago we had RightScale on talking about that if sometimes when events are going to happen, and that you'll need more infrastructure for that. But if you can say you can look at these past events and they can prove a trend, or they can show you a trend, and then you can say, hey, let's take that and plan accordingly for the next time that we would end up. So that you're hosting a website for a music group, and that they're up for a Grammy. Hey, if they win, they're going to get a lot of views. So let's go ahead and upscale for that proactively. Great point, Don.
It's pretty cool because I'm sure the crew down there in San Antonio have noticed this if they're watching the NBA Finals, and they have that Twitter scale and who's going to win, and it moves back and forth, kind of going live as people tweet, or their own sort of analytics that they're taking in from their website. That's another way of monitoring as well. So kind of to add on to what Don has done in the past. Again, there's tons of ways of monitoring different things.
Great, yeah, great point.
Yeah.
Go on, Drew.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say, and speaking of which, I think we all know who is going to win the NBA Finals, and I think that I can definitively say that it will be the San Antonio Spurs.
As long as it's not LeBron James.
Yeah.
He's the only hope of the other side, but anyhow. One of the things I'd like to kind of piggyback off of these, seeing what's going on and watching thresholds. When you see these spikes, there are times when you need to take actions, and some of the things that Rackspace has been doing with our monitoring tools are giving you some ways to kick off certain actions in an automated way when a monitoring alert fires. So you can set the agents that we have a monitoring agent that we can have installed on servers. you can set thresholds, not just critical, but when it's reaching one of those levels that actually kick off specific events. We have an API that's built around our monitoring tools and can add some real functionality around some of that automation of, well, add another server, or when the threshold gets hit, maybe pull a server from the rotation to scale back down. But Steve, you want to talk a little bit about some of the functionality that our monitoring agent has, and maybe even some of the API only components that are getting baked in kind of as the product matures?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I'm excited about is what the cloud monitoring agent and the aggregated data provide for us to do. The simple response is, hey, we can send an email, or we can hit a webhook to a web page that can then be proactive on, like you said, say spinning up additional cloud servers. But what I'm really excited about is the future of what cloud monitoring offers, because it does give you access to that data, so then you can make appropriate decisions. At this time, the tools to actually do that aren't as advanced or as mature as I'd like them to see, but just kind of future speak here. In the future, we're going to see tools that can monitor a cloud server or a load balancer or a site, and when the time comes, they're going to hook over and be able to say, hey, that's down. We're going to spin up a new server, put it behind the load balancer. Or let's say a whole data center goes down, and we know it's down because a certain IP address isn't responding back to maybe those weather patterns. Let's go ahead and change a DNS entry and point you to your failover location, which is in a different data center that Rackspace manages, or even Rackspace doesn't manage. There's a lot of cool stuff available because this is all done programmatically. It's not just a fancy web interface, which is what some of the cloud monitoring solutions out there started as. Rackspace Cloud Monitoring really turned itself into a very long-term product, and it's one of the best projects I've actually been a part of, just from a support stance, because of the ability to grow from what they've already done. They didn't put together a product that could just monitor. They put together a product that could monitor and then could hook into everything else. So that API that you mentioned, that's literally where the functionality exists in the cloud monitoring product. Everything that our customers consume on the front end are all hooks into the API. So we're really gambling on that programmatic approach in regards to creating the functionality that can then create these additional tools. Auto-scaling features or auto-failover features, which don't really seem like a big deal until you start to build really cool tools with them. In the near future, I'm really excited to see what Rackspace does and what third parties do, because it's an innovative time, and this whole cloud thing is really spurning us into the next level of what the web can offer. And it's exciting to be a part of.
And Steve, you're referencing the Racksmon API, right?
Well, Racksmon is just the tool, Jeff. It's a command line tool that allows you to hook in, so you're not writing actual API calls. You're running the command line tool, and then it converts those. And so it's basically just in the background sending curl requests, which are of course just hitting an HTTP setup that is responsive to your requests for data, for alterations, etc. So Racksmon is just the tool that allows you to do that from the command line, rather than using curl or HTTPI, things like that. But yeah, Racksmon's a great tool. I use it pretty much every day. I send lots of bugs to the developers, and it'll continue to grow. So definitely don't expect the Racksmon command line utility to go anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned before there, Steve, all of our web interfaces are built off of that API. So oftentimes we'll get some new abilities within the API before we have a chance to put a pretty interface on that. So definitely, if you're interested in doing anything with monitoring, with really any of our tools, check out the API, because you're going to be able to do potentially a lot more, and you can kind of do things behind the scenes without having to do them manually by clicking links and things like that.
Absolutely, that web interface is nice. It gives you some analytics that are pretty helpful once you set up some of these monitors, but the ability to do more and to get a hold of some of these advanced features and some of these early access features almost every time is going to be available in the API before it's available in the control panel. And like Alan said, this isn't specifically for monitoring. This is for Rackspace Cloud as a whole. There's a lot of things that may be available in OpenStack. We find a way to get that integrated into our cloud, but takes longer to get it in a pretty interface. So you'll be able to go ahead and do it, but you'll have to use the API, and it can pay huge dividends to spend a little bit of time really getting comfortable with the Rackspace APIs. Be that the monitoring API, Nova agent for interacting with servers and some of the compute components. But there are a lot of tools out there, and those tools may take some time to be easily available and have that pretty GUI, but with that understanding and experience on the API side, a lot of times the solution you're looking for is there. It's just not obviously available, and having that API understanding can get you that functionality. One of the things I want to talk about in that final phase of your life cycle is being live, having a production environment going. There's a lot of tools that can be leveraged against that production environment, but your needs have changed a little bit from a staging environment. It's not as important if your staging environment has maybe some intermittent unavailability because it's not production. But once it's production, you've got some real solid needs around that uptime and around some of the other components you defined in your planning phase. Rackspace offers a few different monitoring tools, and some of the functionality that's there on the remote monitoring, port, ping, and URL. Those are pretty standard and actually can be leveraged against any solution you have really anywhere. But then that agent can be leveraged as well. And if you're a managed cloud customer, you get 8 free monitor checks with your account. But also, if you're deploying our LAMP stack, there's a Munin that's already on that server. Like we've mentioned, there's a ton of third-party solutions that can be leveraged against that account and against that solution. So depending on what you're looking for, there are a lot of opportunities to leverage not only what Rackspace offers, but some of the other open source monitoring components, paid services like CopperEgg and New Relic and some of these other components. So being sure that you make that transition from I just need to understand what would happen if to I need to know what's going on now and be alerted if something happens. Steve talked about when you set up these monitors, that's basically telling Rackspace, hey, this thing is important to me. I need to know if there's a problem. So you've called that out and highlighted it. If you're letting us know that that's important to you and the monitor fires, then we'll jump in and help. But there's very often actions that you'll need to take also, or there could be some situations where that could happen. So fire drills aren't only applicable during planning. It's good to do an occasional test of this is what we put in place. Does it still do what we intend, or does what we intended still apply to what we're doing today? So.
Well, yeah. You look at some of the more successful cloud-only deployments. I mean, like Netflix, and they've built entire tools. They're Chaos Monkeys, Chaos Gorillas that go out and just actually do that, not just in like a development environment, but in their production stuff. And they say, is this still working? And what happens if I knock out this cluster of servers, or just pull the plug randomly on a couple of servers? So that is definitely something you can do. There are those tools, and they've open sourced their Chaos Monkey, Gorilla, Simian Army, all of that, and that's all available to you to do. And it's they're not without their downtime, but they're not afraid to try this because they've got plans in place. They've got those monitoring agents in place. They know what to do if something goes down.
They've taken the approach to force themselves to endure these fire drills. It's a whole system that won't allow them to take the day off, and that they're going to continue to improve and build because they have um, these programs in place that go in and actually make things break so that they can see that the tools they've built respond properly. And you don't have to have it automated, but you really, really should have a solution that you're testing on occasion to ensure that the functionality you need is the functionality that you have. Sometimes those priorities you set at the beginning don't apply. Something's changed. They've grown. You have a new set of stakeholders that have additional requirements. But going back to what you've got in place and verifying that it's still applicable and that it still functions in the ways that you need them to is absolutely critical to continue to be the viable company and have the viable solution in place. And so can't emphasize that enough. Monitoring is a component to this, but everything we talk about on these office hours, from setting up backups to building a scalable environment to understanding the tools that are at your disposal, all of those are pieces of the bigger puzzle of having a solution that gets you what you need, and understanding that and that it is an evolving thing is really important for any business.
Yeah, and Netflix is a great example of what I call visionaries, where they were a DVD distribution through the mail company is now becoming more of an online presence, less reliance on DVD. So it's almost like they're able to see this in the future and prepare for it. Therefore, build the right tools around it rather than, we're just going to roll out our online, environment and then worry about setting all the tools and monitoring around it. And that kind of goes back to, with all the business components, with from top to bottom, talking about, okay, this is our model right now. We're a DVD based, mail company, but this revolution of the cloud and streaming and all that is coming down the road, and we need to kind of get all our business lines of service on board so that we can now move to that next phase, which is streaming.
Yeah, they always had a great web presence. You could go and edit your queue. You could see through all of the different media that they offered. But as they moved from just that one business model to a more diverse business model, they really embraced what they'd already built and committed to making that better. That's the story of every business, is you start out in one place and you see opportunities change, and you have to take that that in stride and always kind of keep the things that you built in that that you thought through in the planning stage throughout your business. So as things change, you keep revisiting that. What's the most important thing? Where are our priorities? How are we solving those things? Are they still working? And that's a cycle that you can always rotate through. And a lot of times innovation comes from revisiting what's absolutely critical and what can we do to make that more effective. You see that in the products that keep coming out in the greater environment. Third parties that are building things, they're looking at what's absolutely critical for businesses. How can we solve those problems? That's how OpenStack is continuing to evolve. That's how our competitors and ourselves are continuing to put out great innovation. Is you don't sit on your laurels. You go and push through the next thing. And it could be as simple as using some application monitoring to tweak and tune individual components of your code, or it could be as giant as an entire business shift like Netflix took when they went from being mail order to streaming. Anywhere in between, it's revisiting what's the most important thing, how are we achieving it, can we do it better? So,
yeah.
We've got about 10 minutes. There's a topic on the table, but this is the cloud office hours. So if anybody who is listening on the Hangout, if anybody who's joined us here wants to jump into the chat or throw some questions out in the Google Plus event room, please let us know. We'd be glad to cover anything that might be monitoring specific or cloud more generally. Jeff, do you have any questions, things you're looking at, or maybe Don
Yeah.
could jump in?
You guys have mentioned it in the past, and it was a service that sends you text messages, and I think you guys rely on it heavily. I just can't remember what the name is. And I believe it is, you can incorporate it into the Rackspace cloud. Don't know off the top of my head.
It's most likely PagerDuty, Jeff.
That's it. That's correct. That's the one. So my question around that is, I mean, do you guys recommend that as adding, that to your solution? Because I have the agent installed on all my servers and I get threshold alerts and all that stuff. But as far as PagerDuty, is that something else that would be advantageous for me to add on to my existing monitoring solution?
It depends on what you want to do with them. As Drew mentioned earlier, you go through the process and you actually have to have, that playbook on what we're going to do with this notification. In a lot of circumstances, you getting an email will be sufficient, and that's like me personally, all the stuff I monitor, I just send myself an email. I get the email, I crawl out of bed at 3 a.m. and I come fix it. But if you need the added the added benefits that PagerDuty provides, then yeah, cloud monitoring does allow and does have hooks into PagerDuty, so you can definitely work within the confines of what they provide.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, having those playbooks of, if this monitoring alert goes off at this threshold, then an email's fine. But if it hits this higher threshold, then it's more critical, and I need to have, that the alarm clock's volume turned up, or I need to get other people out of bed. Then you may have that progressively increasing monitoring solution, and that's all based on need, and that's all something that gets worked out from a case by case what happens when standpoint. And maybe the thing that is a lesson learned from some issue that came up. I got the alert just like I expected, but because of the circumstances around it, it'd be nice to text the other person on the team or some other component of this, so that next time the same thing that happened doesn't happen, or we're able to respond more quickly, or whatever.
Yeah, and PagerDuty allows you to set schedules for different people, determine how to notify them, things like that. So if you have a full-fledged support staff of 30 people that work at different times, then yeah, PagerDuty is an awesome solution.
Great.
If it's just you, then an email to you is probably all you need. Me personally, for all the websites I run, I just send myself an email. I don't mind crawling out of bed. My wife isn't happy about it, but you got to fix the website.
I agree with that. Wife complaining about the cell phone going off all night.
Yep. Well, that's one of the things where if you have that playbook set up with us here at Rackspace, we can handle a lot of that for you and kind of at least get you, if you have some predefined parameters, we might even be able to take care of the entire issue for you, and then you'll just get that email that can go quietly to your phone that says, hey, you had an issue, we took care of it, we're good to go. So that's another option that you have there as well, if you've got a really well-defined playbook. Looks like we got another great question from Don here. So he first of all he put forward his support for the Spurs in the series, but also he asked, what is or do you believe is the most overlooked and yet very important metric? And the contrary to that is, what is the least valuable metric when monitoring?
From my perspective, I mean, anytime you get metrics, it's good. You want them. You want them available to you. But the one that I see, at least Rackspace customers grasping to understand and utilize correctly, is memory utilization. As we're selling this utility-based service, the pricing is based on memory. Right. And so as you allocate additional resources, you use more memory. And then as your traffic increases, you run out of memory. And well, if you had done load testing, you would know that you were going to run out at a much lower level than what you ran out at. So me personally, I deal with memory issues all day long. It's what a lot of our support volume is based on. And most of the time, it's just, hey, I made a modification to my website, my traffic patterns are normal, and, well, your site crashed because you ran out of memory. So I'm a big fan of configuring a full array of monitors for customers because I'd like those metrics to be available in the future if I need to analyze a problem. But for, point in time, hey, there's a big issue, my website is in the process of going down, memory is what's going to be the one that identifies that for us most of the time.
Great. One thing that you mentioned that Steve, that I really liked was if you run out of memory, that's going to be what knocks your website out. And one of the things we try to preach is to always build an architecture that is able to scale both horizontally and vertically. So that means usually putting, a load balancer in front of your web heads that actually take up a lot of that traffic. That load balancer can distribute traffic. So, you can scale your server vertically, right? So as Steve was saying, hey, I made some changes. Now my server's running out of memory. What do I do? Well, one thing we can do is increase the size of that server. But we're going to hit a cap at 30 gigs of RAM for that server. So what do you do after that? If you're still not able to go past that 30 gigs, man, you're stuck, and that's it. But you set yourself up preemptively with a load balancer. You might be sailing along just fine, on a 8 or 15 gig server. And then you get a whole bunch of extra traffic. You hit the front page of Reddit, something like that. You can scale vertically and hit that 30 gig limit, and then say, okay, well, let's add some more web heads behind that load balancer and take off some of that processing power, and then you're going to be able to keep moving along. It really it doesn't limit you if you start off with that. Stuck in that vertical scaling only model, you're going to hit a pretty hard limit pretty fast.
The other thing I would pitch in there for the going from a 15 to a 30, you're doing a real blunt change to your solution. You're doubling your resources. If you're at 15 and you really need slightly more, going that big jump from 15 to 30 is adding a ton of resources, whereas if you've gone and built something that's more modular and you have individual smaller servers, you can add another individual smaller server and step it out as you go. Instead of buying yourself a ton of overhead, you don't necessarily need it at the time. From an efficiency standpoint, from the ability to see exactly how much you need and fill that need without over provisioning and over spending to do so, it's hugely valuable from the business standpoint as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a technical question, it can be an efficiency question as well from the business standpoint, from the cost standpoint.
Right. So
being able to take those targeted steps instead of just this blunt force, here I'm just going to throw a bunch of resources at it, approach can really pay dividends on a couple of different levels.
Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true. So I guess that's going to be, probably be our last question for the day. Thanks everybody. We're kind of coming up to the end of the hour here, so we're going to go ahead and say bye for the day. Just want to mention that there are a couple of ways that you can stay connected with us through social media. There's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, of course, Google Plus here. You can follow us, circle us, like us, whatever mechanism for showing your approval your social network of choice has. Go ahead and do that, and you can stay up to date with the latest news from Rackspace that way. You can also interact with us, of course, through these live events like that. You can also always contact Drew, myself, anybody else on the cloud launch team. We're here to help you preemptively engage in some of this stuff. So if you heard a topic today or in any of our previous episodes that you want to go over in a little bit more detail, we're more than happy to engage with you on those. So you can give us a call. We're in the office during normal weekday business hours for now. Hopefully getting that staffed up a little bit more. But you can give us a call, 800-480-3163. And you can always email us at launch@rackspace.com. That's launch like a rocket, not lunch like I just ate. So we look forward to hearing you from those. We do these every week, like I've mentioned before, every week, every Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Time. You can catch us here talking about something. If you have a suggestion for an episode, please use one of those methods to get in touch with us. We're happy to work that into another episode. Next week, we are hopefully going to have some good friends of the launch team, Flow Cycling, involved. Flow Cycling is a really cool racing wheels manufacturer for bicycles, and they've had some really good success with using Rackspace and using some of these scaling techniques. So they're going to be visiting us here in San Antonio, and if we're lucky, we'll have them on there as well. Another thing I wanted to mention and just say thanks to everybody that's helped us out. I want to say thanks to Jeff for joining us, Steve for taking a little bit of time to join us as well. Drew always joining us. Looks like is that Garrett just joined us there? Hey Garrett, how you doing? Yeah. Garrett's one of our social media guys. He makes these great videos. Drew and I were both in a couple of videos that Garrett's made before. I don't just say that because we're in the videos that he does. I say that because he makes good videos. So anyway, thanks for everybody here at Rackspace. Special thanks to Jackie and David, who kind of work on the back end of things and get these things up and running. And also wanted to give a shout out to Hangout Magics. They're the company that made these graphics. Jeff. I'm not sure if that's the one that you're using or not, but Drew and I are both using these overlays for the lower third to get our names out there, so you can know who's talking and when. So Hangout Magix, Magix, actually created these really cool, and you can go there and make one of your own as well. So I guess that'll do it for us this week. Looking forward to catching you guys next week. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Later on. Go Spurs, go.
Go Spurs, go.